This is the DCF801 12V Impact Driver from DEWALT. If you've been following this channel for a while, you would know that I have a bias for impact drivers. The impact driver happens to be my most favorite tool. It's funny because I actually used to think of it as an unnecessary tool, and to some extent that's still actually true. Truth be told, you can drive a screw with a drill if you had to. I just find it a lot more fun and satisfying to do it with an impact driver. And because of my love for impact drivers, I've had the privilege of trying quite a few models from different brands. Having said this, I'm no expert, so still take what I say with a grain of salt. Which brings us to this little, unassuming, modest 12V impact driver with some big tricks up its sleeve. In a previous video I talked about some of my old impressions and misconceptions actually on 12V tool lines that no longer apply today. I also talked about some of the things that are exciting about the growing line of 12V tools and why I think they are a worthwhile investment in this day and age. This tool right here is one of the reasons DIYers, woodworkers, and even contractors need to take a closer look at the wisdom of investing in 12V tools. For starters, let's talk about power. Everyone wants to talk about power, especially when you talk about the 20V line versus the 12V line. But honestly, power is relative to function. The core function of an impact driver, at least for me, is to drive screws. Typically, for any given project, I will probably use screws ranging from 1 to 2 inches. Most of the time, hovering around the 1 1/4 inch range, as I usually work with plywood and pocket holes. So for this kind of screw driving, power after a certain threshold isn't as relevant. Let me try and show what I mean by this. Here's a 1 1/4 inch screw that I am going to drive into this piece of wood. You'll notice that with the 20V impact driver, I drove it in just under a second. And with the 12V impact driver, it took me exactly a second. Is that significant? I guess if I was driving hundreds of screws at a time, it would be. But for my application, that's insignificant. Having said that, if I was driving longer screws, like these 3-inch screws, the difference is more stark. And if you consider that this length of screw is typically used in framing, where you could use hundreds of screws depending on the size of the structure, then that time difference is definitely significant. So again, power is relative to function. And the function that I'm looking at for this 12V impact driver is driving 1 to 2 inch screws, in which case, I feel there is little to no compromise in power. Now let's talk about the upside of going 12V instead of 20V. I think the most significant benefit is size and weight. While it may not look like much, I believe that the smaller an impact driver is, the better. It's just easier to get into narrower spaces when the profile is smaller. As far as weight, the 12V is a lot lighter. These two things are super important if you like to use the belt clip like I do and significantly reduce tool carry fatigue. The other thing about this particular model are the different settings available to you. It has these settings for the drive speed that come in really handy for those intricate jobs like cabinetry where you really want to make sure you don't overdrive a screw. Final thoughts on this impact driver. I think the biggest thing going for 12V tools like these is that these are a real alternative to the most common tool pairing of a drill and impact driver found in most 18V toolkits. The significant difference in size and weight make it a very relevant consideration when you need to do a small job in a tight space where you have to carry both tools either with you or in a tool bag. I would definitely recommend having a pair of 12V tools like this if you can for those smaller jobs where you just want to get in and out quickly.